We're starting our lesson on the urinary system. The urinary system is also known as the excretory system. Both of those are terms for the same thing. And this system is responsible for removing wastes and extra water from the body. And it helps maintain the body's balance of acid-base. So it's one of the major body systems that maintains that homeostasis that we've talked about before, which is a state of equilibrium, or that constant natural balance in the internal environment of the body. So this urinary system is important to keep everything in balance. The parts of the urinary system are 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 bladder, and 1 urethra. And if you look at your picture that I've included for you of the urinary system, those are listed there. Along with the adrenal gland, which is on top of the kidneys, and some of the different parts of the kidneys. But you'll notice that you have right and left kidney, right and left ureter, and they lead to 1 bladder and then 1 urethra. So first we're going to talk about the kidneys. The kidneys are bean-shaped organs that are on either side of the vertebral column, on either side of your spine, behind the upper part of the abdominal cavity, and they're separated from this cavity by the peritoneum. So that's called retroperitoneal, or behind the peritoneum. So they're in the abdomen behind the peritoneum. And they're protected by the ribs and a heavy cushion of fat. And some connective tissue holds them in position, otherwise they'd kind of fall down. Each kidney is enclosed in fatty tissue and then covered with, called the adipose capsule, and it's covered on the outside externally by a tough fibrous tissue called the renal fascia or fibrous capsule. Now each kidney is divided into 2 main sections, and you have a picture of those sections on the picture that I've included. The medulla and the cortex. And you can see both of them on the kidney that they've cut apart on what is the picture's left side, but on your right. So remember, it's in anatomical position. So if you look at the left kidney, that's the one that's cut open. And what you see there is the cortex, and the renal cortex or the kidney cortex have most of the nephrons. And we'll talk about nephrons in just a minute. And then the renal medulla is the intersection, and it has most of the collecting tubules. And then there's a notched area that the ureter, the nerves, the blood vessels, the lymph vessels enter and leave. That's called the hilum. Now the nephrons are really important. They're the microscopic filtering units. Oops, spelled that wrong, need to fix it. Not unites, but units in the kidney. And there's more than 1 million in each kidney. So there's a lot of nephrons in there, and each nephron consists of a bunch of different parts. Now remember, you can't see them, they're microscopic, and there's more than 1 million in every kidney, but each one of those nephrons have a I can never say this word, glomerulus, Bowman's capsule, proximal convoluted tubule, distal convoluted tubule, and a collecting tubule. And if you look at your next picture, there's a picture of a nephron. Remember, this is microscopic. You can only see it with a microscope. But this is a picture of it. And what happens is, each of those nephrons, the renal artery is going to carry blood to the kidney, and the branches of the renal artery pass through the medulla of the kidney to the cortex of the kidney, where the blood enters that first part of the nephron, the glomerulus, which is really just a cluster of capillaries, and you can see that capillary net that they're showing you. And remember, capillaries is where you exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide and waste with the blood. So as those things, as the blood passes through the glomerulus, water, mineral salts, glucose, which is sugar, metabolic products, and other substances are filtered out of the blood, but they leave behind red blood cells and proteins. They're not filtered out. And the filtered blood leaves the glomerulus and makes its way to the renal vein that carries it away from the kidney. And then those substances that were filtered out in the glomerulus enter the next section of the nephron called the Bowman's capsule. Now that's a C-shaped structure that surrounds the glomerulus and is the start of the convoluted tubule. It picks up the materials that was filtered from the blood in the glomerulus and passes them into the convoluted tubule. As those pass through the different sections of the tubule, substances needed by the body are reabsorbed and returned to the capillaries. By the time those filtered materials pass through the tubule, most of the water, the glucose, the vitamins, and the mineral salts have been reabsorbed. But the excess glucose and mineral salts, some water, and waste like urea, uric acid, creatinine, they remain in the tubule and become known as the concentrated liquid we call urine. The urine then enters the collecting tubules that are located in the medulla, and they empty into the renal pelvis or the renal basin, which is just a funnel-shaped structure. That's the first part of the ureter. Alright, so now we're going to talk about the ureter. We've got two ureters, and now we're looking at the back of the body. So in this picture, the right is actually the right and the left is actually the left, because we're not looking at it from anatomical position. But the ureters are two muscular tubes, one from each kidney, that are going to the bladder. And each one of them is about 10 to 12 inches long. And peristalsis, which is a wave-like movement of the muscle, moves the urine through the ureter from the kidney to the bladder. And we've talked about peristalsis before when we were talking about the digestive system. Next thing we're going to talk about is the urinary bladder. There's only one. It's a muscular sac, and it's hollow, and it lies behind the symphysis pubis at the middle of the pelvic cavity. The symphysis pubis was part of the skeletal system right there in the front of the pubic area. Now, the bladder has mucous membrane lining that's arranged in a series of folds called rugae. Those rugae disappear as the bladder fills with urine. As it expands, then that smooths out. Now, there's 3 layers of muscle that form the walls of the bladder. There's smooth muscle or visceral muscle, and the walls of the bladder, which receive the urine from the ureters and stores that urine until it needs to be eliminated. Now, when you feel the urge to void, which is the term for emptying your bladder, or urinating, or another term for it is micturating, you're going to feel that urge when there's about 250 milliliters of urine in there, which is about a cup of urine. But you can actually hold more. The bladder can hold more. There is a circular sphincter muscle that controls the opening to the bladder that prevents it from emptying. When the bladder is full, then the receptors on the bladder wall send out a reflex action that open the muscle. You have practice controlling that so you don't end up urinating all the time. But infants can't control that reflex action. As children age, they learn to control the reflex. Next thing we'll talk about is the urethra, which is the tube that carries the urine from the bladder to the outside. That external opening to the outside is called the urinary meatus. Alright, so the urethra carries the urine to the outside through the external opening, which is the urinary meatus. Now, the urethra is different in females and males. In females, that urethra is only about 1.5 inches long. It opens in front of the vagina and carries only urine to the outside. In males, the urethra is about 8 inches long, and it passes through the prostate gland and out through the penis, and it carries both urine and semen, although not at the same time. Urine is that waste product, that liquid concentrated waste product that was produced by the urinary system as it filtered the blood that was in the capillaries. And it's about 95% water. There's other waste products dissolved in it: urea, uric acid, creatinine, mineral salts, some pigments. There's also excess useful things like sugar, which can be found in the urine. And if you have useful things that are being excreted, that usually indicates there's a disease of some kind. Like maybe your body's producing too much sugar, which would indicate maybe diabetes. Now, every day, your body filters about 150 quarts of liquid through the kidneys, And when it does that, it produces about 1/10 of that in urine. So 150 quarts is being filtered, and you produce about 1.5 to 2 quarts of urine from that. So about 1/10 of it. 1/100th of it. All right, now there are some conditions that affect urination, and we're going to go over those terms. If you have excess urination, that's a lot of urination, or polyuria. Below normal amounts of urination, you're not producing enough urine, it's oliguria. Absence of urination, anuria, or A means absence or none. Hematuria, hema, blood in the urine. Pyuria, PY, is a prefix indicating pus in the urine. Nocturia, NOCT, indicates night or urination at night. Dysuria, DYS, indicates painful or uncomfortable urination. There's also retention, which means you retain the urine so your bladder doesn't empty completely. Incontinence means involuntary. I need a T right here, need to fix that. Involuntary urination, so you aren't able to hold the urine, it comes out when you don't want it to. Proteinuria, protein in the urine. Albuminuria, or albumin, or a blood protein in the urine, both of which are unusual. Frequency means you need to void frequently, and your urgency means I have to go now, it's urgent.